Om Ajnanatimrandasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalaam Shri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sijivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Namo Namo Aniruddhaya Hishikesha Indriyatmane Nama Paramahamsaya Purnaya Nivritatmane Swarga Pavarga Dwaraya Nityam Suchi Sade Nama Nama Hiranya Viryaya Chaturhotraya Tantave. Hare Krishna. Now today is a very auspicious day in terms of the Ekadasi, and tomorrow we will be having Vamana Dwadasi, which is the appearance day of Lord Vamana Dev. It's very significant in the sense that Lord Vamana Dev was amongst the prominent incarnations of the Lord. He appeared in the Brahmanical form. He appeared as a Brahmana. And his whole theme and idea was to ensure that the mode of goodness rises above and is dominant and stays in charge of the material universe. And that is done through the suppression of the other modes, but also through imparting of very, very special knowledge. So in that sense, today being Ekadasi and tomorrow being Vamana Dwadasi, it's a very, very auspicious opportunity for us to begin our sessions on the sharing of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's been several weeks since we concluded Sri Sikshashtakam, and I was attempting to start a combination of Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, which didn't quite work out because as I reflected on it, I felt that the continuity which is required for me to be able to cover a vast subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam would be lost if I were to switch between the two subject matters every week, so once on Monday and once on Thursday. Rather than pursuing such an agenda, I came to the conclusion that it would be better for me to merely focus on Srimad Bhagavatam, and whilst focusing on Srimad Bhagavatam, I will make an attempt to touch upon Bhagavad Gita, and I will use Bhagavad Gita quite extensively because this was the whole purpose of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavad Gita was spoken by Krishna. Therefore, it is directly knowledge that has been shared by Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is the glorification of the pastimes of Krishna, the glorification of the Leela of Lord Krishna. So there's a difference in that Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna, while the Srimad Bhagavad Gita is the directions given by Krishna on how to approach him. So it's quite natural that if one were to make an attempt to start a serious study of Srimad Bhagavatam, one will have to take on a serious study of Srimad Bhagavad Gita along with Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a combination. One has to draw direction from Bhagavad Gita, and with that authority, one will have the ability to approach Srimad Bhagavatam. Along these several weeks, we started speaking in 2015, starting on the 2nd of March. And we started with Harinam Chintamani, we went to Madhurya Kadambini, and then we touched upon Sikshashtakam prayers. And then finally, we want to start very consistent sharing of Srimad Bhagavatam. And the reason is that all of this, which is Sri Harinam Chintamani is one of the most important, if not the important scripture, which we need to grasp at the very essence. The reason is that Our whole practice centers on being able to chant the pure name. We will have to be able to chant the pure name, which is our sadhana, and then attain the sadhya, which is to be able to taste the ecstasy of experiencing prema, which is Krishna prema, which is the ultimate goal. So the sadhana, which is chanting of the holy names, and sadhya, which is the goal itself, are non-different. It is going to be delivered by the holy name. So the whole process hinges on our ability to effectively chant the holy names. And that's why Sri Harinam Chintamani has found an extraordinary place in our being able to execute Krishna consciousness. Madhurya Kadambini expands further on the challenges and brings us very, very close to the objective, because the objectives are being defined very, very clearly by Sri Madhurya Kadambini. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur defined the objective as being attaining Krishna Prema. Madhurya Kadambini is an expansion of, or rather an elaboration, an essay. It's a short essay on key verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written by Srila Rupa Goswami. Right? So in the beginning of the Mangalacharan, we chant Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitamena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. When will Sri Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who has established within this material world the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? So this entire mission is, we are Rupanugas, we are followers of Srila Rupa Goswami. And Srila Rupa Goswami directly received instructions from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the mission that we are engaged in of propagating the holy names is the mission of Srila Rupa Goswami. Okay? So in that sense, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is one of the key tests, and Madhurya Kadambini derives from that and summarizes the objectives of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So from all of this, we came to Sikshashtakam. Sikshashtakam gave us different stages and allows us to capture the different stages if we do a daily meditation. So the entire gamut of what we studied in Harinam Chintamani, in Madhurya Kadambini, it can be summarized, it can be attained, it can be encapsulated in 8 verses. And if we meditate on those 8 verses every day in the morning before beginning our sadhana, we will also be very fixed in our goal. Because one of the great difficulties in executing a spiritual process is not being able to understand the purpose of executing such a process. When clarity is absent, then the person does not feel too enthused because they are not clear on what the next steps ought to be. What is it which one has to look forward to? What is it which one has to overcome, so to speak? That is not clear, then it's very difficult. Now, we will notice that the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam is deriving, or rather, all these studies that we did of Harinam Chintamani, of Madhurya Kadambini, and Sri Shikshashtakam, they have all derived their impetus, they have derived their enthusiasm, this inspiration from Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? You will be able to very clearly see that Srimad Bhagavatam and the conclusions of Srimad Bhagavatam have been the drivers of everything that we have studied so far this year. That includes Harinam Chintamani, Madhurya Kadambini, and Sikshashtakam, which is pretty fascinating. And this is all from even the first canto. It's not even from the first canto, it is from the first few chapters. From the very early chapters, we will notice that there's great parallel between whatever has been written by our acharyas as the sum total of what we need to accomplish. Okay? So that's the first learning. So to first begin, what I would like to do is I would like to set an approach. I would like to talk a little bit about an approach, and then we would like to go, a little bit into what we're going to accomplish over this long period. Our approach is going to be based on the recommendation of Krishna. We're going to take Krishna's lotus words as shown in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. We are going to capture those lotus words, and we're going to employ whatever he has asked us to do in trying to understand him. Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. One cannot approach Krishna unless we understand how he wants us to approach him. You see? Srila Prabhupada and many of our acharyas have very clearly said that Srimad Bhagavatam is indeed, the study of Srimad Bhagavatam is indeed the treasure of those who follow in the footsteps of Gauranga Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya himself. Why is it so? Because one cannot really relish Srimad Bhagavatam unless one has the objective of attaining Krishna Prema. at least the objective has to be centered on Krishna Prema. One who attains Krishna Prema has the ability to completely relish Srimad Bhagavatam at all times. But for those who want to relish Srimad Bhagavatam and want to move forward, the objective has to be very clear, that one has to engage in the practice of wanting, the goal of life should be Krishna Prema. There can be no distraction whatsoever. And I'm going to talk about it today. I'm going to touch upon, the mood in which we ought to approach Bhagavatam. That is the reason why, it is almost like a birthright for the followers of Gauranga Mahaprabhu to engage and to propagate and to immerse themselves in Srimad Bhagavatam. Why is it so? Because our objectives are Krishna Prema. Our objective is Krishna Prema. Because the objective of chanting the holy names, the sadhya, is Krishna Prema, and Krishna Prema is required to understand Srimad Bhagavatam, we are much more aligned than anybody else in being able to appreciate the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. You see, we are much more prepared. We are geared towards such accomplishment. Okay? We are already in the line of Srila Vyasadeva. So we are, in one sense, you can say, the despondency of Srila Vyasadeva after he had compiled the Vedanta Sutras, after he had compiled and separated the Vedas. All the Vedas were one. All the 4 Vedas as we see them are one. And then all these verses in the Vedas were compiled based on their ability and based on the subject matter. Okay, it was compiled into different parts. So the Yajur, Rig, Sama, and Atharva, they were all one. And then Srila Vyasadeva took out verses and then put together a certain set of Vedic sections into Atharva Veda. He took out certain sections and created the Sama. And then he took out certain sections and created the Rig. And then he had Yajur. So all of these, Yajur is rituals, Rig talks about mantra sadhana, Sama is about the glorification of the Lord. Brihat Sama, which is the heart of the Samaveda, is 100% eulogies on the glories of the Supreme Lord. It is called Vedatma. The Atma of the Vedas is the Brihat Sama. So a personality such as Srila Vyasadeva, who has compiled all the 4 Vedas, and he has written the Puranas, and then he had completed all the other writings, the preliminary writings and the supplements, he was feeling quite despondent, unfulfilled. That despondency was fulfilled by the writing of Srimad Bhagavatam on the instructions of Srila Narad Muni. If you notice throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, and if you notice throughout the history of Bhakti, Sri Narad Muni is instrumental in practically the biggest changes, shifts in consciousness that have occurred in the course of history. He is instrumental. As far as Vishnu Tattva is concerned, he is instrumental. He is instrumental. The course of Sattva, the course of Bhakti, he is instrumental. Okay? So quite naturally, Sri Narad Muni instructed and cleared the confusion, or rather the despondency of Srila Vyasadeva. Srila Vyasadeva is an incarnation, the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. And Srila Narad Muni cleared his despondency, and the despondency or the feeling of being unfulfilled, unsatisfied, dissatisfied after doing so much was actually because he had not come in touch with the transcendence of Krishna Leela, Leela Purushottama, Krishna. So in preparation for that, he began writing the Srimad Bhagavatam. Now it is our good fortune that Srila Prabhupada made it so accessible. To so many people, he just made it accessible. This literature, which was thus far not available, it was available to perhaps scholars. If at all it was rendered in English, it was rendered by people who are not bhakti yogis. They were not devotees of the Lord. In other words, even if they were devotees of the Lord, the objective of the personalities who translated into English and so on was not Krishna Prema. So it was Srila Prabhupada's greatest gift to us that he translated this extraordinary literature and gave us access to it. And today, every one of us, with our little iPods and iPads, have access to one of the most confidential and extraordinary literary work in all time. There are many versions of the Srimad Bhagavatam as we hear. And we hear this, and these are not many versions because of obscurity of knowledge. There are versions in different universes. There are different universes, different pastimes have occurred. Different pastimes have been recorded. And sometimes they say that there are versions of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? Our version is the version that's given by Srila Prabhupada. We'll stick to it because even if we were to take that up as a lifetime task of completely being absorbed in completing what Srila Prabhupada has given us, it is still a lot. It is still a lot. Okay? It is quite something for us to be able to reach proficiency, or rather, our objective. Our objective, again, is not to become scholars. Our objective is to attain Krishna Prema. And our objective is to attain Krishna Prema so that we may be able to absorb ourselves in the wonderful pastimes of the Lord as given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, for which Krishna Prema is a prerequisite. One cannot understand the pastimes of Krishna without Krishna Prema. So we are going to talk a little bit about our approach. Okay. Now, there are 12 cantos, and I will be covering 12 cantos with the blessings of the Parampara for my purification. I'm very excited because Srimad Bhagavatam, when you read it, it's so exciting just to read Srimad Bhagavatam and the purports, that I know that I would receive some gifts, and those gifts I will pass on. It's a great gift to be able to speak on transcendental literature, because once you take up the task, you become an instrument, and the Parampara uses you to pass on certain messages. And when they use you, they offer realizations. And those realizations are amazing, powerful gifts which one can cherish. And so I'm very excited when I start something new, because I know that, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, by the mercy of my Guru, I will be able to receive a few gifts, and those gifts in turn, I would be able to pass on. That's where the excitement comes in. It's almost like unraveling something. It's like opening a gift that you have received. Okay, we're excited about this starting. So let's get going on understanding the approach. I was thinking that for these sessions, I will prepare slides. It would give me some definition, because I have to cover a lot to accomplish covering 12 cantos, 18,000 verses over 108 weeks, which is two sessions a week. It's quite a task. Okay, so let me just ensure that I can have a proper delineation of what I wanted to share. One moment, I'm just going to open up the slides. Just hold on. Okay, I'm just going to share my screen because, okay. Okay, is everybody clear on this? It's clear. Okay. So anyways, these are 108 weeks of 216 sessions, and they cover 12 cantos. So it's quite a task, if one were to really see, of being able to do all of this. So what would be the general approach in which we would be proceeding? I will not be touching upon each and every verse. What I would do is that I would assimilate several verses, collect the essence, and then present the essence for us to relish. So in other words, it may not be a verse by verse presentation, because a verse by verse presentation will not work in a short duration of 108 weeks. I will have to assimilate. I will have to possibly do perhaps 1 or 2 chapters, or capture the essence of 1 or 2 or 3 chapters, mention the verse numbers. We would probably do the Sanskrit, because the Sanskrit is very purifying, and then we would talk about the essence of all of this. So that's the approach which I would be taking. So I just wanted you to be aware of it as well. I don't know if you have any suggestions that will help you participate in these sessions better. If you let me know, then I would probably be able to incorporate your suggestions into my presentation that will begin the following week. Okay, I would be very happy to receive feedback. I would be very, very happy to receive your suggestions in how I should proceed. Okay, so because of the fact that you might have your own pace and you would want to advise me. That is the first thing. Now, the first thing that I want to do is, as I mentioned earlier, the whole objective of Srimad Bhagavatam is being defined in the Bhagavad Gita. So we want to start with the Bhagavad Gita, understanding what we ought to be doing. Okay? And in the Bhagavad Gita, specifically, the key verses that I want to touch upon are 18.65 and 18.66. These are very well-known verses. I've spoken about it several times. But then there is a reason for my touching upon it, because I wanted everyone also to understand that the appreciation of Srimad Bhagavatam cannot happen unless we are fully in tune with the Bhagavad Gita, because that's Krishna. Krishna is telling us how to approach him, and Bhagavatam is Krishna. So we better follow Krishna's instructions while we're trying to incorporate. So the first thing that we want to talk about is verse 64, 18.64. Sarva guhyatmam bhuyah shunume paramam vachah ishtoshi me dridamiti tato vakshyami te hitam. Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit. And this is very confidential knowledge. This practically fits into the Bhagavad Dharma, the whole idea of Srimad Bhagavatam being the summum bonum. It is the mature fruit of the realizations of Srila Vyasadeva. Very, very confidential. Put yourself 5,000 years back. Put yourself in the ashram of Srila Vyasadeva. Understand that these scriptures were written by hand. He practically, everything was compiled into palm leaves and so on and so forth. So there were no printing presses. So this was very confidential. It was not mended, or rather it was not really meant for a very broad audience where everybody can access it online and so on and so forth. However, the mercy of Lord Chaitanya was such that he created this extraordinary flooding of the whole world with the most transcendental and confidential aspects of his own Leela. Right? It is Mahaprabhu's mercy that we have access to Srimad Bhagavatam. But Krishna is telling us that this is very confidential. So we have to understand that this is very confidential, and we have to develop, an attitude which is filled with intense gratitude, an attitude of gratitude, as we call it, where we are very, very grateful for just being a part of Mahaprabhu's mission, and then more so as we are connected with Srila Prabhupada. More so because we are connected to Srila Prabhupada's mission as well. Because without Srila Prabhupada's giving us the Srimad Bhagavatam in English, practically, everyone in Kali Yuga is a Shudra. Imagine the struggle of wanting to understand Sanskrit, the hazard of misinterpreting, the hazard of coming in touch with other transcendental literature which could contaminate us. Other literature that could contaminate us, other translations. All of these have been completely, obfuscated, removed by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada used to tell his disciples, tell me what your problems are. Give me the problems and I will crush them. I will crush them to pieces. He really has crushed a tremendous amount of obstacle for us to move forward, which is what the Srimad Bhagavatam is. So that is 18.64. Krishna is saying it is very confidential. What is he saying in 18.65? Manmanabo madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru mam evaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosi me. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you're my very dear friend. So Krishna is alluding to the fact that he is going to share very confidential knowledge, and then the confidential knowledge is Krishna Prema. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Okay? Always think of me is Krishna Prema. Always think of me. Complete absorption. And that is the confidential instruction which Krishna has given. And why is he giving it? He is giving it because Arjuna is his friend. So here we are talking about a personal relationship. So one has to have the desire to have a personal relationship with the personality of Godhead, with Krishna, a desire for us to be able to experience a higher level of confidential knowledge, a desire to know who we are in relationship to Krishna, a desire to know him in full. All of that, all those desires are the basis for our being given confidential knowledge. Please remember that. Our own ichcha and desires are going to lead us. The greater the level of desire, the intensity of desire, the greater would be the doors the greater would be the opportunity that will be opening out to us. Okay, that is going to be something which you also have to remember. One of the greatest difficulties that souls face after coming into Krishna consciousness is not with the sadhana. You see, it is not so much the sadhana which is problematic for us. Please remember that. Chanting 16 rounds, which is 90 minutes approximately, or 2 hours, chanting 16 rounds, following the regulative principles, not an issue for any of us. It is not an issue. The real issue is the complexity of our own lifestyles. Our own lifestyles are a result of desires that have dominated us for several lifetimes, and more so in the recent years before we come into Krishna consciousness. Since we have already created a certain lifestyle based on desires other than wanting to know Krishna in full, other than wanting to know who we are, other than wanting to know what our service is, we are facing complications in executing Krishna consciousness. I hope this was clear. Our difficulty does not lie with 16 rounds. Please do not think 16 rounds is a problem. It is not an issue. Our difficulty lies with the way our lives have been arranged because of desires that existed before we knew the goal of life. So it is very imperative that we understand the goal of life, absorb our goal of life, and then basically focus towards what is really important so that the future is better than the present and the past. If the present is challenging, and if we do not change our desires, we would be creating a future which is like the present and like the past. If you are facing challenges in being able to execute Krishna consciousness, it is because your desires in the past were not proper. We did not desire to be Krishna conscious. So we are saying Krishna is giving us a goal now. He is saying, Manmanabo Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. He is telling us that, better develop proper desires, because this is the goal. This is confidential knowledge, Arjun. You will come to me if you have this confidential knowledge in your heart. That's why setting a goal before we begin Srimad Bhagavatam is very important. Understand that Krishna is already telling us 18.65 is the goal. Prema is the goal. There's nothing else to be attained in life. Nothing else. Everything else is to support the primary goal of attaining Krishna Prema. How we arrange our life has got to depend on how easy it is for us to execute Krishna consciousness. Please remember that part. Okay? Because that meditation was not in the forefront, we are facing challenges in whatever we do. So those challenges in themselves are a reminder to us that our planning in the past did not have Krishna in the center. So if our planning in the present has Krishna in the center, if our planning and focus on Srimad Bhagavatam has Krishna in the center, in other words, we come with the mood of wanting to attain Krishna Prema, then Srimad Bhagavatam will deliver us from our conditioning. It will. Our objective should be very clear. Once we combine powerful chanting with good reading, which is Shastric reading, which prepares us for experiences like the Srimad Bhagavatam, then we are well on our way for us to be able to resolve most of the issues that we face. Okay? Now, Krishna is confirming what we just shared in 18.66. He is saying, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayasmi ma suchaha. Sarva dharman parityajya. Why is he saying that? Why is he saying that? Because he's saying that you have chala dharma, you have upadharma, you have developed several identities, and one amongst those identities is being my servant. Now, Arjun, remove all those other identities and focus on being my servant. Understand that being my servant is the foremost qualification and the central focus of your existence. So that's why he's saying, Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. So mamekam sharanam vraja is required, for which we need Krishna to be in the center. And if we start planning life with Krishna being in the center, and then we say that whatever we do from now on, every day, in the morning, evening, afternoon, so on and so forth, then we would be 100% aligned with our objective of attaining Krishna Prema. If we have our objective clear, then Srimad Bhagavatam, studying Srimad Bhagavatam will be a wonderful, amazing experience. Because every time we come in touch with the transcendental literature and the pastimes of the Lord, it would be an extraordinary process of taking us to the next level. There would be realizations, there would be experiences, so on and so forth. But we have to fix the objective. That is the reason why I brought this up. Fix the objective of Prema. We have no other objective. Anything and everything we do has to do with our being able to attain Krishna Prema in this lifetime. Do not fall prey to the misnomer that we have not been given enough by Krishna. We have been given whatever we need for us to move to the next level. Srila Prabhupada has made all the arrangements that are necessary. So accept that All arrangements have been made necessary, and engage with confidence. That is how we are supposed to do it, and that is exactly the subject matter of Sikshashtakam. Sikshashtakam verse 3, Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarori Vasahishnuna, Amani Manadena, Kirtane Sadahari. Why is it that Mahaprabhu has mentioned that? He has mentioned that as a qualification, as as an attribute, as a process for us to be able to attain Krishna Prema, as a process for us to be able to chant the holy names, the pure holy names. Since that is the process, why is that process being given? He is practically telling us, Trinadapi Sunichena Tarori Vasahishnuna, Amanina Manadena. These are the qualities of a Brahmana, right? Being as humble as a blade of grass. Why? Because his identity is fixed in being a servant of Krishna. He does not have absolutely any attachment to identities on this plane. His identity is being a servant of Krishna. Okay? That's the reason why the person does not have false pride associated with this world. Now, Bhagavad Gita 14.6 talks a little bit about the problems of the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is where we are in. For most of us are engaged in the mode of goodness. At least if you're not in the mode of goodness, it's an issue. We have to come to it. The mode of goodness has a characteristic. The characteristic of sattva is brought forth by a lifestyle. The lifestyle is a certain time for waking up, a certain time for going to bed, having a certain system. You see, if you do not have a system, then you are not going to be able to calibrate where you're going wrong. If you do not know when and what we are supposed to do and where the challenges are, we would never be able to plan and mitigate those challenges. So it's very important for every one of us to have a system. What is a system? I'm practically saying that all our difficulties are due to the lack of having proper sadhana, proper chanting, proper reading, and proper association, and so on and so forth. All of this is our real challenge. Proper chanting is absent. So when should I wake up? When should I go to bed? What do I eat in the night? What time do I wake up, and so on? That's a system. Having a certain system and being very systematic and following it and then calibrating it, making changes is going to be key for us to be able to develop Brahmanical life. Once we develop Brahmanical life and we are sattvic for most part, then sattva will give you its own problems, and which is what is being addressed by Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu is talking about Tarori Vasahishnuna. Sattva brings its own problems. The mode of goodness causes problems because it results in false pride. You see, what happens? Once you attain the mode of goodness, we attain knowledge. Once we attain knowledge, we become proud. Once we become proud, then the difficulty arises for us to move forward because we think that we have already accomplished all that needs to be accomplished. The real obstacle in the conditioning of the mode of goodness is complacency. We become complacent. We become complacent where we start thinking that we have already attained the goal. The mode of goodness is not our goal, but it is required. So please understand and examine our own hearts. If we feel too proud because we are knowledgeable, because we have understood certain things better than the other person, if we are dealing with the other person in a manner which is despicable in an improper way, then that is a conditioning that we have attained based on the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness has given us the gift of knowledge, and that knowledge has made us proud. Mahaprabhu is saying you cannot make any progress unless you resolve that issue. And that is why that verse 3, is critical. That's a process. Trinadapi Sunichena Tarori Vasahishnuna, Amani, which is pridelessness, Manadena, which will automatically allow you to respect others. Okay? That is being shared as a process. So working towards Brahmanical life and then using that as a platform is going to be key for us to understand Srimad Bhagavatam as well. Do not ever imagine that we can approach Srimad Bhagavatam in the lower modes. We cannot. The lower modes do not give us access to Srimad Bhagavatam. We cannot approach Srimad Bhagavatam in the lower modes. At the very least, one has to be in the mode of goodness. And being in the mode of goodness essentially means that you will have ease in being able to manage your life. Because suffering ceases, there will be knowledge. So if that is not being experienced, which means we are far away even from the mode of goodness, it requires work. That's what we need to understand. Okay? So again, that is something that I just wanted to share, that our own daily lifestyle is going to become very critical for us to be able to move forward in understanding Srimad Bhagavatam. A serious study of Srimad Bhagavatam requires that we are at least in the mode of goodness. And mode of goodness will bring forth certain characteristics, which essentially means the agenda is not to gratify our senses. Our agenda is not to engage in sense gratification. Our agenda is not to engage in wanting to develop things which are not connected to the goal of being, attaining Krishna Prema. So the goal setting becomes also a part of it. Higher the level of, the consciousness, better would be the objectives that will come forth. So we should examine our objectives, we should examine our propensities, and understand where we are. Calibrating ourselves is going to be very important for serious study of something as wonderful as Srimad Bhagavatam. And then finally, we have to understand, why are we being asked to focus on a linear pattern of study of Srimad Bhagavatam? Why are we being told, don't jump into the 10th canto? Don't jump and go deeper into the 10th canto. Don't go into confidential topics. Okay? That can never be understood unless we go into the Bhagavad Gita. We have to understand who Krishna is, and we have to understand who we are. And Krishna talks about this in chapter 4. In chapter 4, 4.9 specifically, he is very clear. He is saying, right? Janma karma chame divyam yo vetti tattvataha tyaktva deham punarjanmanaiti mameti. So Arjuna, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So one who knows the transcendental nature, one who has understood Krishna and Tattva. And what is Krishna and Tattva? You see, Krishna is very, very complicated. Krishna is very complicated. He is not as straightforward as Lord Rama, isn't it? Lord Rama is very straightforward. It is very easy to study the Ramayana and to absorb the tenets and the ideals set by Lord Rama. But it is very difficult to read the Krishna Leela, because he's Leela Purushottama, and not have doubts in our heart. That's the reason why we need to be guided by someone who is completely free of all doubts on the position of Krishna. And Krishna says this. Why is he saying this in the Bhagavad Gita? Why is he saying, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo vetti tattvataha? He's saying, my activities, one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. He's saying that there's a problem. It is not easy to know the transcendental nature of Krishna's activities. It is very easy to lump Krishna's activities into mundane activities, as many scholars have done to their own failing, their own destruction. It's very easy. That is why Krishna is very clear in 4.9. He's saying, don't think it is easy. Arjun, don't think it is easy to understand the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities. Now we will have to understand, why is Krishna so complicated? Krishna is complicated. Okay, what do we do? What do we do when we see the Supreme Lord, who is the summum bonum, the all-worshipable? He is the avatari, he is the origin, and he is the source, he is the objective of everything. Right? What happens when we see him stealing butter? Right? He's a chore, he's a thief. So when we start understanding that the Supreme Lord is a thief, it bewilders Mother Yashoda. She starts thinking, how is it possible? I have the best butter, I have everything in the house, I have milk, I have everything. Why should he go out to steal? Why should he go out to steal? So how can one understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source and the cause of everything, he is the avatari, how can one understand that this particular objective of Krishna, to steal and to enjoy, stolen butter, is transcendental? It is transcendental, isn't it? So it's a bit confusing. It's a bit confusing when you really look at it from the perspective of a jnani, which is how most people approach the transcendence. Even Sri Uddhava approached transcendence. What to say of us? We are minuscule, we are insignificant. Uddhava, who is a very confidential associate of the Lord from his Dwarka pastimes, from his Mathura pastimes, Uddhava himself has this tendency to completely become absorbed in jnana, not being able to understand the transcendental nature of his activities. Right? He is a Brihaspati Shishya. Uddhava was the disciple of Brihaspati, the guru, the preceptor of all the devas. So he was filled with knowledge. As a consequence, this knowledge in itself causes false pride. And how does that false pride arise? This false pride arises because it makes us think that we have already attained what needs to be attained. So Uddhava himself had a problem when he was with Krishna, and Krishna, to solve that problem, sent Uddhava to go and talk to the Vrajavasis. He sent a message through Uddhava. And when Uddhava arrived in Vrajadam and he spent time with Nanda Maharaj, he spent time with Yashoda Mai, he spent time with the gopis, he then was purified of his consciousness, what to say of our position, which is completely obscure and insignificant and confused. Can we imagine that? This is the personal associate who sits across Krishna, right? Who sits across Krishna, who sees Krishna, and who is able to have interactions with him. He was confused about the confidential pastimes in Vraja, what to say of our position, what to say of the mundane thought process, right? So Krishna is quite right when he says, you have to understand me through tattva. How can we understand the confidential, pastime? We do sing, right? Gopi Vastra Hara. What is Krishna called? He stole the garments of the gopis. Gopi Vastra Hara. We glorify him in that manner as well in some of the songs. How can one understand that this is the summum bonum? This is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is supposed to be the source of all morality. He is supposed to be the source of all, highest, behavior and so on and so forth. And there he goes stealing the upper garments of young girls. How can we understand that? How do we even approach that? He's a chore of butter. He's also a thief of garments of young maidens. And then he is the most worshipable Lord. So Krishna's warning in 4.9 is very clear. He says, Arjun, better approach me through tattva. Tattvadarshi, become a tattvadarshi. Approach me in the process of attaining tattva. He's saying, right? Janma karma chame divyam, evam yo vetti tattvataha, tektva deham punarjanma, naiti mamso Arjuna. Without understanding the transcendental nature, do not jump to conclusions. If you do that, then it's a disaster. Krishna is giving a clear warning to Arjuna, saying, approach me through the process of tattva. Now let's understand tattva. What is the meaning of tattva? The real tattva is that Krishna is the bhokta. Krishna is the bhokta. He is the enjoyer. And we are bhakta. The gopis are bhakta as well. Everything that exists in the world is to be enjoyed by Krishna. So bhokta versus bhakta. Do not try and understand Krishna from our position. We are also to be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. We are also to be enjoyed by the Supreme Lord. So everything is to be enjoyed by the bhokta, right? We say, what do we call the offering before it becomes prasadam? We call it bhoga. Why do we call it bhoga? Because it is to be enjoyed by Krishna. So when we understand that his position in tattva is to be a transcendental enjoyer, he is the transcendental Cupid, he is everything. As a consequence, everybody else is the enjoyment. Everybody else is a bhakta. The bhokta enjoys the bhakta, right? Our position is to become a bhakta. Our position is to position ourselves to be able to offer pleasure to the senses of Krishna. That's the difference between bhokta and bhakta. That is the message of 4.9. And what does Krishna say? He says that if you want to understand me, you better understand this fundamental difference of tattva. My tattva is I'm a bhokta, I'm an enjoyer. Your tattva is you are to be enjoyed. And who is going to talk about this? He says, go and talk to a tattvadarshi, which is 4.34. Okay, I have spoken about this several times. And the reason why I'm repeating it is that one should understand that we are entering into very confidential transcendental literature. It is better to have the fundamentals straightened out. Understand the goal, understand our own challenge. If you don't have Krishna Prema as your objective, if we have objectives of enjoying in different ways, or rather even resolving things, because some of us have the attitude of looking at things as being half empty rather than half full. Then if you are going to be looking at things as half empty, having objectives other than wanting to attain Krishna Prema, the full experience of Srimad Bhagavatam will be absent. At least the objective has to be straightened out. It has to be straightened out. Okay, let's go on to 4.34. In 4.34, Krishna again says in the Bhagavad Gita, Tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshyanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshinaha. Why is he saying Tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya? What is the meaning of pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya? The real meaning of pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya is one who has faith. Only when we develop deep faith can we ever sit at the lotus feet of our acharyas. Can we sit at the lotus feet of someone wanting to receive from them if we do not have faith? Can we do that? We cannot. So, what is the real meaning of pranipatena pariprashnena seveya? Pranipatena pariprashnena seveya means we sit at the lotus feet of the acharyas in complete submission. So, the inquiry before beginning Srimad Bhagavatam also has to be very submissive. Srimad Bhagavatam has to be approached with a very submissive mindset. It cannot be approached in any other mindset. It will not yield any fruit. Okay, that is the other part to it. And what is submission? Submission translates to faith. It's very simple. How does the child submit herself or himself onto the hands of the parent? It's because the child has faith, right? In a similar fashion, when we find someone whom we can surrender to, that requires faith. That is pranipatena pariprashnena seveya. And what results after there is pranipatena pariprashnena seveya? The resultant of pranipatena pariprashnena seveya is tattva darshan. If we want tattva to be understood, if we want Bhagavatam to be revealed to us, let's develop this attitude of pranipatena pariprashnena seveya. Let's develop the attitude of sitting at the lotus feet of Sri Guru. Let us sit in that particular position. Let's approach Srimad Bhagavatam with the mood that we are here to absorb and receive from Srila Prabhupada. Okay? Do not ever develop the mood that we can scrutinize and criticize what has already been written. Nothing will work out if that is the mood. So there's the other side to it. The flip side to it is that we have to approach the Tattvadarshi in the mood in which we have to approach Tattvadarshis. We have to approach Tattvadarshi with the mood of complete surrender, of wanting and having complete faith, right? So that's the requirement. So these are the requirements for us to be able to move forward, and we would be able to share and we would be able to receive Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay? Now, I'm going to stop here for today's session. Every session would possibly be of the same length, 45 minutes. I will open up for questions after the 45 minutes is over. And you can continue submitting questions even through the session as you used to do before. I would be very happy to address them at the end of the session, as I am today. And then, we will end in probably an hour. If people want to leave after 45 minutes and they want to look at the questions later, so be it as well. Okay? And so now I will end today's session. I just wanted to summarize quickly. The first step that we wanted to do was to share the objective. The objective of reading Srimad Bhagavatam is the same as the objective defined by Krishna in 18.65 and 18.66. It is the same. It is Manmanabhav Madbhakto Madhyajimam Namaskuru. It is to constantly being able to remember Krishna. This objective is the same objective as was mentioned in Harinam Chintamani. It is the same objective as was mentioned in Madhurya Kadambini. It is also the same as in Sikshashtakam. Constantly being able to remember Krishna is to be in love with Krishna. And attaining Krishna Prema is the objective that is required. At the very least, one needs to have clear objective of wanting to attain Krishna Prema through the process of chanting the holy names. If that objective is clear, then one can approach Srimad Bhagavatam and will derive great benefit through the Srimad Bhagavatam studies. Why? Because Srimad Bhagavatam is to be relished by Krishna Premis. It is to be relished by those whose objective is Krishna Prema or those who have attained Krishna Prema. So please set your objective. Do not become distracted. Okay? Our own calamity in inability to perform sadhana properly today is not because it is complicated. It is because our lifestyles are complicated. Our surroundings are complicated. We have made it complicated. Why so? Because we didn't have proper desires in the past. Our past desires were improper, so the present is complicated. If the present desires are proper, even if it is complicated, the future would become much, much easier. So set the objective of attaining Krishna Prema in this lifetime. Do not think of this lifetime as a prep lifetime. Some people feel they can do something this lifetime, they'll come back again the next lifetime, and so on and so forth. That may not work for us. We have to set the highest objective. And then if we at least set the highest objective, by default, one may fall one step lower. Then I also spoke of the difficulty. The primary difficulty that we face is that at the very least, we have to be in the mode of goodness. And the mode of goodness, which is knowledge, which gives us knowledge, which prevents suffering, is also an obstacle because it's a form of conditioning. That conditioning, which is the mode of goodness, allows us to think that we know more than others. The moment we start thinking that we know more than others, the moment we start thinking we are in knowledge, and that is a complete definition of complacency. Okay? That complacency is enough to throw us to the wayside. We can just fall apart with just that complexity in mind. Okay? That complacency in mind. Just remember that. So there is difficulty. Our process of the Shikshashtakam of verse 3 still remains 100% in force for studying Srimad Bhagavatam. One has to develop the attitude of Trinadapi Sunichena, Tarori Vasahishnuna, Amani Manadena, Kirtane Sudahari. Because Kirtan is Srimad Bhagavatam. One cannot engage in Manmana Bhakto on Srimad Bhagavatam without that verse. Then we spoke of the difference between Bhokta and Bhakta, which is the real definition of Tattva. When we are entering into confidential topics, they can bewilder us. So one has to be very careful in understanding it. There should not be an iota of doubt in terms of how to approach Krishna. He is the Bhokta, we are the Bhakta. The gopis are the Bhakta. As a consequence, the Bhokta can enjoy them in as much as he wants, in whatever way. So there is absolutely no restrictions for Krishna. And our definition of Bhakta is we present ourselves. Then Tattva Darshan, we have to approach the Guru, and Bhagavatam is also to be understood in a proper mood. We'll have to approach the Shastra with the mood of Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya, which actually translates to faith. That is how Tattva Darshan would take place. Okay? So we end here, and we will see if you have any questions that we can address. Okay, I don't think we have questions, which I'm not surprised with because it was introductory. We'll meet again on Monday, and I will begin the actual sessions on Srimad Bhagavatam, which is going into the verses. And it's again at 8:30. We will end by 9:30, and again on Thursday. So both sessions in the week would be Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so we'll stop right here. Thank you very much for joining us. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.